Hello again. Welcome to another edition of CropLife Retail Week. I'm Eric Sfiligoj, editor of CropLife magazine, here with my co-host Richard Jones. Richard, you're looking good today.
Thanks, Eric. You too. Morning. How are you on this beautiful spring morning here in Ohio?
Yeah, it's very nice. I know it was about 70 yesterday. I think it's supposed to be again today. Although I did see something in the forecast regarding the white stuff. Maybe come Sunday, so hopefully nothing major. So.
well, regardless of what happens up here on Sunday, at least spring is starting. People getting out in different regions to plant and start the season, so that's good news.
Yeah, I'm sure, Richard, as we're sending this video out to viewers, there are lots of people in the Mid-South region and southern parts of Illinois, Indiana, Ohio that are out in the fields, putting down fertilizer, getting seed into the ground. So I'm sure it is all hands on deck, full speed ahead for everybody.
But if it's March and spring and you're traveling, there was obviously a big show that you were attending with a lot of the Meister team recently at Commodity Classic. You want to tell us a little bit about what you heard down there?
Yeah, actually, the Commodity Classic returned after a 2-year absence of in-person event. It was taking place in New Orleans, which I got to say, New Orleans in middle of March, I expected it to be sunny and 70 degrees. When I got down there, though, it was in the 40s, raining, cold and miserable the first day, only wearing a windbreaker and a short sleeve shirt. And I know even when I left, it was also in the 20s again. So, cool. But in between, there was a day where we actually made it up to 70, and I was comfortable. But nonetheless, even though the weather wasn't the best, the show itself went pretty well. I guess overall, I had about 6,200 folks there, including about 3,400 growers. And in a normal Commodity Classic pre-COVID, they would draw between 7,000 and 8,000 people. So, and most of the events as I've been to this year, I've said have been about 75–80% of their pre-COVID total attendance number. So I guess a little quick math, Commodity was on par with that. The big thing at the show, Richard, besides the fact everybody was really happy to be back, is there was some discussion of the Russia-Ukraine situation, of course, which we'll be talking about a little bit more here upcoming, but also a lot of new product introductions at the show. And the technology side, of course, John Deere had their See and Spray, which I'm sure folks are familiar with by now, but along those lines, other things I guess you'd call precision agricultural technology. You had Raven Industries that introduced an updated OmniPower autonomous spreader, the 3200, at the show. We also had the folks at BASF announcing that they were teaming up with Raven and Bosch to do a smart spraying solution, is what they're calling it, which they're hopeful will be launching here in 2023. And that was the other big theme, of course. Most of the products I was hearing about at the show, they're all going to be geared towards the 2023 season. Sounds like 2021 sort of paused everyone's plans, so that now that they're going full speed ahead to get the regulatory approvals they need and other factors in place so that they can get these products into the marketplace. It looks like it'll be next spring when we'll be seeing a lot of these. That would include Corteva. They're introducing something called Vorseed Enlist, corn and rootworm control. Helena talked about their Protecta method, which they're going to be using to make new fungicides and insecticides for the marketplace. And then Syngenta had a new soybean seed treatment called Cruiser Max Apex, and that's a capital A, capital P, capital X.
Okay.
So those are some of the new products that we found out about that are coming up in the market here for 2022, and most, like I say, most will be for 2023. And then, of course, one of the traditions at a Commodity Classic is the Secretary of Agriculture is the keynote speaker. And Tom Vilsack was there. And then I got a couple of video clips to share with our viewers. The first is him basically saying that he's glad to actually be back speaking in person in an event for the first time since he was named the Secretary of Agriculture. And he was commenting a little bit on the Ukrainian situation and also talked about how American farmers are furthering the cause in the US market to make sure our food security is there. So here's that clip.
This is the first opportunity I've had as Secretary to really speak to a very, very, very large group, other than the Farm Bureau convention that was earlier this year. And I'm really excited about it and a little nervous about it. So hopefully I don't lose my place in my notes as I speak to you. And I wanted to start by indicating that I'm here today to talk about the opportunities and challenges facing American agriculture and how confident I am in a bright, hopeful, and optimistic future for American agriculture. But my day actually didn't start with this appearance this morning. It actually started with a meeting of G7 agricultural ministers, where we had the opportunity to talk about the situation in Ukraine. And during the course of that opportunity, we had a chance to hear from the Ukrainian agricultural minister, Sfiligoj. He was obviously in a bunker, surrounded by sandbags. And I thought to myself, what incredible courage it takes for him to visit with us, to plead with us for support and help. And as I listened to him speak about the circumstances in this great country, it impressed upon me the importance of all of us who live in a free and democratic country, never to take that privilege for granted. And I believe one of the reasons why we're able to celebrate that democratic freedom is in large part because of people in this room and the hundreds of thousands of farmers and ranchers and producers that live, work, and raise their families in America. See, I think you folks are critically important to the fabric of this country, and I think what you have done and do has allowed this country to grow and expand. I believe that American agriculture helped to create an expanding and strengthening middle class over our history, which has led to America being the strongest and most powerful nation in history. I believe that we need to continue to figure out ways in which we can strengthen that middle class. For far too long, I think we've had a situation where a few very fortunate folks have done well, but the rest of it is a struggle. We need, as the President says, we need to grow this economy from the bottom up and the middle out. And I think American agriculture can lead that effort as it has in the past. I believe that it's important to understand that 89.6% of American farms do not generate the majority of income for the farm families that farm. I believe we can do better. I believe that the notion that the only way to succeed is to get bigger or get out is not the right way. I believe there's a better way. And I believe that that better way starts with developing more new and better markets that allow our producers and rural America to get more of the value and the wealth that you all create.
So that's what Tom Vilsack had to say, Richard, about U.S. growers and the Ukrainian situation. Like I said, I thought it was fascinating that earlier that morning, before he was speaking before the live audience in New Orleans, that he had been speaking to the Secretary of Ag in the Ukraine, who he was talking to from a bunker, a fallout shelter, if you will, to try to protect himself from the attacks of the Russian troops that were invading near, I guess, where he happened to be. So
just amazing things we're seeing these days, things that we wouldn't have expected we'd be seeing in situations like this, but it's great that we're able to still engage and be active and try to help over there where we can. And I know everybody's paying a lot of attention to the ag perspective on, what's going to happen with fertilizer, raw materials coming out of there, but also just ag crops, wheat, all these different angles that we need to be considering, because everything is going to, it's a global situation. We're all going to be impacted by these things one way or another.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned, of course, the global fertilizer situation, because there's been a lot of talk about that. And one of the things that Tom Vilsack did is, in this video clip that I'll be showing, he is announcing the U.S. government's $250 million grant program to spur the development of more fertilizer coming from United States sources. So here's that clip.
I think we have to recognize that we're too reliant on outside sources of fertilizer and the ingredients of fertilizer, that we rely on countries that may or may not agree with us on a variety of issues. That we've had this incredible efficiency based on this global system that we put together, but that we forgot about resiliency. That we focus so much on efficiency that we forgot about the ability to make sure that if there is a disruption, that we're able to adjust and to shift. So today, in an effort to begin the process of giving you more tools and giving American agriculture more tools, we are announcing an effort to jumpstart independent production of fertilizer made in America with innovation, utilizing and impacting and assisting the sustainably active farming operations. We're announcing $250 million of USDA resource that will be made available in the form of grants to assist in that effort. And we are also will launch in the very near future a series of requests for information that seek to ask questions and to obtain information not just about fertilizers, but also about the way in which seed patents are currently being used, and the relationship between farmers, wholesalers, distributors, and retailers, just in an effort to make sure that these relationships fairly and equitably distribute the wealth that's created by the work that's done to get food from your farm to my table.
So that's what Mr. Vilsack said about hopefully getting more American-made fertilizers coming into the marketplace, so that the dependence on other outside sources for fertilizer for U.S. growers won't be as necessary going forward.
No, that's it. We've got to be prepared for these situations. It seems like every year there's a different challenge that we've got to overcome, and the more we can be working on this in advance, we're going to be better prepared for the next one. So when you were walking the aisles at Commodity Classic, I know you get stopped a lot and talk to just about everybody there, it seems like, but what were you hearing from folks on the floor there with regard to the current situation, not just with the war, but with energy and inflation and the economy and the cost of diesel and everything else? How are people looking at this season? Are people prepared?
Yeah, it seemed like it, Richard. I mean, most of I talked to about a dozen growers, a couple of ag retailers that were at the event, and for the most part, they all told me the same thing, that for spring, since we're already, knee deep in the spring season, and truthfully, Commodity Classics are usually held in late February. So this year's being a couple of weeks later, and it was due to, of course, Mardi Gras going on in New Orleans and them not wanting to bump heads with those folks. It sounds like about 75–80% of the marketplace already had everything in place to kick the spring season off without any hiccups. But of course, the question is going to be what happens come fall. That's the big thing everybody's keeping an eye on, because if these situations going on right now, if perchance maybe, the talks between the Ukraine and Russia go well and the war is quote unquote over by May, which I heard the other day is a distinct or remote possibility, perhaps, that things by the time July, August rolls around, when the fall planning is in place, things might be good, but then again, they might not be. So, we'll just, everybody's going to have to keep an eye on the situation. But yeah, the folks I talked to seem pretty confident they'll be able to get through spring 2022 without too many problems.
That's great. And it's certainly something obviously we'll be covering closely through CropLife, not just reporting on the situation, but trying to help find solutions that we can help the retailers help their grower customers as well. So keep watching Retail Week for more on that.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, just one thing we should mention, don't really have too much news to share. However, I know we had mentioned a video or two ago about the potential for a rail strike up in Canada by the second largest Canadian railway. Their union had authorized the strike potentially at midnight on Wednesday, March 16th. And obviously our video will be airing after that time, but I was checking the news and I wasn't finding any new update on that. The key here is, Richard, is the union apparently has to give a 72-hour notice to the Canadian government before they would actually start a work stoppage of some type. And that notice had not been given as of Wednesday, the 16th of March. So this video is airing the weekend, March 19th and 20th. So, it doesn't sound like that there'll be a stoppage before that point, before this video airs. But again, we'll keep following this in future videos and see, because I mean that the potential for that to disrupt potash coming into the United States from Canada could be a serious issue.
And it's hopefully they can get that resolved. We don't need any more variables in this process this spring. Let's take that out.
Amen. Amen. So, hey, I do have some news to share. I know for a while with my former co-host, Paul Shrimp, I teased that we couldn't go a week without some ag retail merger going down. And actually it's been a couple of weeks since I've actually talked about this, but lo and behold, I did find one to talk about this week. Our friends at Mid-Kansas Co-op have decided to acquire a progressive ag cooperative also in Kansas. That merger will go down on May 16th of this year. The Mid-Kansas Co-op name will be maintained. This will add only 2 locations to Mid-Kansas Co-op's total number, taking up from 69 to 71. And they'll be adding about 35 employees. So again, Mid-Kansas Co-op is a member of our CropLife 100. This acquisition probably won't move them too much higher on the list. I think they were at number 21 in the 2021 listing. Maybe this will get them up into the top 20. We'll see.
So it always amazes me how closely you're able to follow this and keep track of the comings and goings with all these co-ops. And so it'll be interesting to see where they do fall on the list this year.
Well, Richard, time for your favorite segment of the show, of course. Everybody's favorite segment. Fun with numbers. So, okay, now last week, in deference to your fans, we went with multiple choice.
Both of them. Yeah.
Yes. And last week, what I did is I gave you a clue and hit you with 4 different numbers as possible answers. This week, we're going to turn that on its head. I'm going to give you a number and I'm going to hit you with 4 possible answers that number might represent.
Okay.
So your number is 45%.
Okay.
Okay. So is 45%. Does that represent the confidence level of growers that 2022 will be a quote unquote good year for agriculture? Does that represent the amount of the U.S. potash supply that would be negatively affected by a Canadian rail strike? Could it be the operating capacity of one European nitrogen fertilizer producer, given the circumstances that have happened in Russia and Ukraine? Or could 45% be the amount of dresser space that my son has taken up with his newest obsession, Rubik's Cubes?
It's nice to see Rubik's Cubes are coming back. That's a fun.
I will, when we're done, I will share a little bit of that with our audience, just so they can see what I'm having to deal with in his room right now. So.
All right. Well, as much as I'd like to guess D, I'm not going to. I feel like B, the actual percentage might be higher than that. So I'm going to say C.
Okay. Yes, you are correct, sir.
I'm pretty good at multiple choice.
Yeah, you're actually doing these quite well. Yes, we found out this week that our friends at Yara, because of the inability to get natural gas supply from our friends in Russia, that they have cut production at 2 of their plants, which now that takes offline 1 million tons of ammonia production and 900,000 tons of urea production. So again, as a company, they're running at 45% of total capacity at the moment. So
it's amazing. This is going to have an impact. So hopefully we can get some of the stuff resolved soon. So the impact is controlled at least.
Yeah, and as I promised, our viewers might remember my son as box person, of course, but like I said, his new thing is he has a very analytical, mathematical mind. So of course, Rubik's Cubes like this, I have about a dozen of these on the dresser. And, he has now gotten to the point where using his little method, he can solve them in as little as 8 to 13 seconds, which is pretty impressive. So then, of course, he moved to the pyramid style cube, which only took him another 20 some seconds. So now here's what we've gone to, Richard. We are what it's called the mega cube. And it's the closest thing. It's also very hard to hold. It's the closest thing I've seen. I mean, it's got so many facets. And this one, when he got it the other day, it took him 15 minutes to solve this one. So I have hope this one will keep him busy for a little while. Because the others, I mean, he just plays with the others randomly and like I scramble them and he solves them in seconds. It's not even fun.
I think he should be doing fun with numbers from now on.
He certainly has the analytical mind.
Oh my gosh, I'm impressed.
Yeah, me too.
Wow.
So anyhow, so I guess that's all we have for this edition of CropLife Retail Week. Thanks, Richard. And thank you, viewers, for joining us. And we'll see you again next week.
Thanks, Eric.
If you have questions or comments about today's episode of Retail Week, contact us by email or Twitter, or type your message in the comment section below. Your feedback is important to us. We will try our best to address your thoughts in next week's episode, and be sure to subscribe